In today's lesson, we're using French drains, which have these added holes to be installed around our in-ground planted Hass avocado tree. And this applies for all the other plants and trees you've got in your garden to help improve the aeration system around the root system, to give you the same benefit you'd have if they're still in the pots as using an air pot. So our goal is to improve aeration around the planting zone using French drains. Let's get started. So this idea was inspired from my interactions earlier this year with my newest gardening friend, Gerardo Tejeda, and he's got dozens and dozens of avocado trees on his property, and he's got, surrounding most of his avocado trees, these French drains. This here is a 4-inch French drain, and Gerardo predominantly uses the 3-inch French drain. And the idea behind installing, especially at the time of planting, French drains is not so much for delivering water to the root system, but providing aeration, the aeration that the plants would otherwise get if they were in the pot. There's some plants that do better in pots than they otherwise would in the ground, and those include plants such as blueberries, and another one is avocado trees. A lot of the gardens I visited throughout Southern California, and even in Arizona with some of the social media I've seen, they'll be planting their avocados in containers. Sometimes they cut off the bottoms and still leave the avocado raised that solid foot to 18 inches off the ground. I've even seen them planting avocados in raised beds, just again to simulate that above ground experience, to make sure that that root doesn't rot. It's again a phenomenon known as root rot, where there's too much moisture around the plant, and that'll hinder the potential and the success and the overall growth and even fruiting success of the tree. So even when we had that one-on-one experience with Tom Spellman of the Dave Wilson Nursery, and we got to experience the experimental orchard that they have there on their site in Hickman, California, we've noticed again a lot of the trees were planted several inches, maybe a solid 6 to 8 inches above ground. Same as the Dave Wilson Nursery experimental lot that they have in Irvine with their apple trees. They're all planted a solid 6, 12, maybe even 18 inches above the ground in these mounds. But as you can see with our Hass avocado tree that we have here, and I'll lay this drain pipe flat, you can see that it's pretty much at ground level. But something that you don't see maybe quite well is that I'm in a raised bed type system. So if you can take a look, I'm sitting on a raised wall that's about, I would say about 18, maybe 24 inches off the ground. And if you take a look behind the Hass avocado tree, you can see there's another about an 18-inch wall that then supports my ice cream, banana, apples, and figs. And as you can see, the plants that it's supporting behind the wall. And the benefit for the plants and trees that are in this system is that it's nearly impossible to flood and drown and damage the root system, because no matter how much water you put, these walls and their cracks in the drain systems that exist behind it pretty much pull and relieve all of that moisture that's trapped, compared to if you were in a flat land area where if there's, downpours, whether it's due to rain or bad irrigation practice, where the land is being continuously moist and wet, again, thereby leading to root rot and plant diseases. That's not happening on this property. But what is happening is I'm surrounded by these vegetables that I planted between these trees that I've got here that are newly planted. And I've got these vegetables that are capitalizing on the light between the trees, and the irrigation practices between the tomatoes and the peppers and the cucumbers that I've got around me are different than the practice you'd use for irrigation around your trees. Take a look over here, the cucumbers. You can see they're growing quite well. We last harvested about 2 days ago, and you can see we've got, I would say, there's got to be at least 6, if not more, cucumbers in here. Take a look down here. There's another cucumber. You can see the bees that are pollinating, creating the next generation of cucumbers. And right up in here, more cucumbers. So we're picking an average of about 6 to 10 cucumbers every 2 to 3 days. And then here we've got our Better Boy tomato bush that's also in its cage. And again, this structure is about, let's say, about 7 to 8 feet tall. And then next to that, we've got the basil. So what's happening here is we've got this irrigation system, sprinklers that are basically watering the vegetable garden on average every 2 days, which is not the ideal practice for your trees. When it comes to your trees, you want to soak the trees. You want to soak that entire root ball with your watering. And then you pretty much want to let the soil dry between waterings, never bone dry, but you want it to dry. And while we still have these vegetables that are growing between the trees, I want to create a system that's going to bring more oxygen to these roots and thereby help improve the overall health of the plant and also help dry the soil between waterings faster than what would otherwise happen with the system that we've got in place. And so what we're doing here in my lesson to you all is to improve the aeration around your new plants. And again, we're not using this for the purposes of watering. We're not dropping water through the pipe. The goal is to basically maximize and capitalize on the holes and improve the aeration, and to also more quickly dry the soil between waterings as well. And that's going to hugely improve the overall health of the plant rather than watering it as you otherwise would your surrounding vegetables. So let's get started. So here we are now again, Hass avocado tree. It was installed just at the end of spring, so it went through the hottest, warmest months. So if you take a look at the leaves here of the Hass avocado, you can see that there's still some residue from when it was sprayed back at the end of spring. And what we simply did was that we sprayed the entire plant with the Ivory Organic 3-in-1 Plant Guard protection against damaging sunburn, insects, and rodents. And by spraying it on the leaves, it's pretty much going to keep the plant protected from insects chewing on the leaves, such as whether it be aphids or grasshoppers and the like. And also, to pull it through summer, we're also minimizing on transpiration, transplant shock, and in just overall just general sunburn. So what we're going to do here is I'm just going to demonstrate real quick how we sprayed the plant. And if you take a look now, you can see that we pretty much have a film that kind of looks like milk. It's a nice light white protection, and again, it serves as an anti-transparent and also helps minimize and reduce transplant shock, in addition to preventing just general sunburn, as when we're in the summer months, we're dealing with 14 hours of direct sunlight against the plant. We're getting a little protection right now under the canopy of the banana. And right adjacent to this Hass avocado is this volunteer fig. And I know a lot of you say that figs in general are seedless, and even though most of the fig varieties out there are parthenocarpic, meaning that even though you see the seeds are basically infertile. They can't germinate them. But this here is proof of the fact that some of the varieties of figs that the birds are getting to and dropping their waste are germinating, and this is how new fig varieties are born. I don't quite recommend that you start figs this way, because your chances are it's probably not going to be as good as the parent plant. As we learned from Zager Genetics just a few months ago when we visited them, they plant 50,000 seeds per year on average, and from those they only pick 2 or 3 varieties that are proven to be better or superior to the parents that were planted. So it takes about 50,000 plants to determine one or to find one that's genetically superior to some of the already existing varieties that are being sold and farmed around the world. So this is really not the best way, but we may use this as rootstock. So what I'm going to do real quick is I'm just going to pull this out here real quick. And for this little plant, I only need to go about 6 inches around the plant to get the majority of the roots. Here we go. Here you can see the root system right there. We got most of the roots. And I'm just going to simply put it in this small container as a temporary home until we find it a better one. To offset any shock to the plant that may have resulted from any damaged roots, and just the fact that we transplanted it from the ground back into the pot, I'm going to cut the plant in half as well. And that's going to help reduce and minimize transplant shock. And just as we did with the foliar spray on the Hass avocado, we're going to be spraying also the leaves of this fig. Again, it's going to help with transplant shock and also serve as an anti-transparent, so that the plant doesn't lose too much moisture. We're going to water the plant immediately and put it in a shady spot where it's only going to get morning sun for the first week as it gets adjusted to its new home. And let's continue with this lesson. So what we're going to do here today, and what Gerardo reminded me of last night during our conversation, is to add even more drain holes than those that come with your French drain system. And again, the goal is to maximize on aeration and to also maximize on how quickly that root ball dries out between waterings. As the issue that we're having here, in addition to, I already spoke about the sprinklers that are going towards the surrounding vegetables. And imagine if you've got a tree in your lawn, you're going to be dealing with exactly the same issue. One other phenomenon that's not ideal for this particular avocado, aside from the temporary shade that we're getting from the Java banana that's behind me, is that Java banana is taking up a lot more water, and a lot more water is leaching now into this bed. So again, there's more moisture coming here, one from the banana watering behind the plant, in addition to the sprinkler system that is surrounding this Hass avocado. And again, the goal is to maximize on how fast we dry out the soil between waterings, in addition to improving aeration. And that's what we're gonna accomplish right here, right now. And so what I'm gonna do right now is simply using a drill bit is add some more holes to our French drain system. So let's do that real quick. So another idea that just crossed my mind was, and something else I saw on social media forums between Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and even on YouTube, is that sometimes you plant your trees and you discover a year or a few years later that the tree has also settled. This year may be a remedy for those trees that have also settled too much, because now again, when it comes to watering, it's getting too much watering, resulting in, again, root rot. But the other issue that happens if, let's say for instance, and again, this is one of the biggest mistakes and things I've been teaching predominantly for the last year on this YouTube channel, is making sure that when you add compost to your native soil, to add a very small amount of compost to your native soil when preparing that mix around your plant. When it comes to avocados, it should be very close to nothing. Just think about soils around the world. In general, the richest soil is only in that top inch or two of the soil, or again, maybe in the avocado forest, it could be several feet. But again, all of that is from the top soil up. Whatever is below the ground is predominantly inorganic. So we're talking about the rocks and the minerals and so forth. But we're not talking about there being any compost. For example, the leaves are broken down, leaf litter, and even the worms are predominantly at the surface level. So keep that in mind when integrating compost into your native soil mix that you're using when planting your plant. Because what's gonna happen to that compost is it's gonna disappear. It's virtually gonna turn into dust, creating a lot of air pockets. And with the weight of the tree and over time, it's gonna settle. And that's when you end up with a tree that a year or 2 or 3 years later, you notice it's about 6 to 12 inches lower than where you originally anticipated it, where you wanted it to be. So another way to maybe remedy it, or at least maximize the health and life of the tree without having to uproot it and restart all over, is probably adding an irrigation system such as this surrounding the plant. I'd put at least 2, maybe 3 of these pipes to simply pull the water out of the way of the plant's root ball and basically get it to a lower level away from the plant. But again, we're not using this system, and this is a huge no-no. And for, I would say more so the novice gardener, this is not a system for watering your plants. You're not supposed to drop your hose into this and deliver water to the bottom of the root ball. Again, when it comes to watering, we've done this lesson for many years now, is the goal when watering is to mimic rain. And when it rains, usually you're watering from the surface down, and that it will water basically all the surface roots and improve the soil biology. Imagine the earthworms, the beneficial bacteria, and the mycorrhizal fungus. They all need water too in order to survive. And if you're watering from the bottom down, then you're doing what is basically the opposite of what would otherwise be happening in nature. You're not watering the plant from the bottom of the plant and allowing the topsoil to dry out. You're going to want to water from the surface and then water deep and allow the soil to dry between waterings. And that's the predominant general best tree care and plant care tips I can give to you. And now let's just continue wrapping this up. So if you take a look now at the French drain, you can see that I've added a ton of holes. You can see some of the original larger holes, and we've added a lot more smaller holes based on the size of the drill bit that I had. And what we're gonna do now is simply install this French drain system around the root zone of the tree. I'm gonna stay about 12 to 18 inches away from the root zone. My goal is not to injure or harm any of the original roots. When we planted this Hass avocado tree about 6 months ago, it came in a 3 to 4 gallon size container such as this. So you can kind of visualize where the roots, the predominant roots would be, which is going to be obviously the size of this container and about this depth. And the goal when installing the French drain is to go about the same depth as the container. And if you can get an extra few inches more, that would be great. My friend Gerardo, around all of his avocado trees, he said he goes 3 feet deep. And for those of you that live in clay soil, such as myself, that might be a huge undertaking to go 3 feet. And again, something else to keep in mind when it comes to your fruit trees in general is that about 80 to 90% of the root system is in the top 18 to 24 inches anyway. So it's not a big goal to go as deep as possible. And actually, in fact, when planting your trees, the goal is to go no deeper than the depth of the container. And this is according to many of the professionals across the country, is to go no deeper than the container, but you can improve the soil around the container. So you can go as deep as a container, and you can go twice as wide, you can go 3 times as wide, improving the soil wide, as the roots are gonna basically anchor the tree in the lateral direction and not so much the vertical direction as many people would otherwise think. For example, a 30-foot tall tree is not going to be dropping roots 30 feet deep. Whenever you see a tree topple over, you'll notice that most of the roots are running laterally. That's where you'll find 80 to 90% of the roots. Just keep that in mind as you're planting and improving the soil around your trees, and even when it comes to your feeding practices as well. So let's get started. So some of you may have noticed throughout this video that this tree trunk on the Hass avocado has also been painted white, and it's an excellent practice for all of your fruits, nut trees, roses, whatever they may be, that you whitewash the tree trunk the same day you plant your tree in the garden. Until this tree develops a canopy that naturally shades the understory of the tree trunk needs to be protected from sunburn. It's a gardening concept that has been known for hundreds and thousands of years, known as whitewashing. And historically, people would use clay or limestone, among other natural ingredients. For the last 100 years, the predominant way has been using paint. Just going to the local box store and putting paint on your trees, but that's not the organic way to do it. The 2 products that I brought here are, if you take a look here, is the Ivory Organics. It's now also OMRI listed for organic use, protection from damaging sunburn insects and rodents. And depending on how much water you add to the product, you can make a can of paint. You can even make 5 gallons of the foliar spray. And the directions on that you can read on the back of this, which is about 1/2 to 1/3 of a teaspoon of the powder to a spray bottle such as this. Or you can go with the whitewash formula, which is the blue label. And this here is, again, it says whitewash on there, protection against damaging summer sunburn and winter sun scald. Doesn't say anything about insects, even though it has some anti-insect benefits, but it lacks the oils you'd otherwise find in the yellow label. And the oils include castor and cinnamon and cloves, garlic, rosemary, peppermint, and spearmint. So 7 natural garden oils that are naturally insect and rodent repellent oils. And those are incorporated into the product to help protect your grafting wounds, in addition to any pruned surfaces, in a natural, healthier way as the product dries on porous compared to latex and tar-based products that trap moisture. So I've now prepared the 3 holes. I've decided to do 3. Gerardo on his property has 2, and most garden landscapes you'll find 1 to 2 of these French drain systems. And again, the value being not to water your tree, but to provide aeration and to dry the soil between waterings. That'll create for a happier, healthier plant. You can see that the plant, without even this French drain added, is now kind of in a raised system. This is otherwise like a raised bed. As you can see that all of these roots are now exposed from the side, and you can imagine that's pretty much what's going to happen with these drain pipes that are now in place. It's going to help dry the soil faster between water. It's going to provide the aeration, and I'm expecting faster and healthier growth. As we've done everything else right, the one thing I'm saying that's flawed in regards to the performance of this tree is it's just not getting that dry soil between waterings fast enough. And again, it can benefit hugely from having that additional aeration that's going to come from this French drain. So now we're just going to cut this to basically fit the holes that we've just created, plus an additional inch or 2. So I'm just resting that in there. And here's the ground level. I'm just going to go up an additional inch, 1.5 inches, and we're going to cut that right there. And now we'll simply backfill the soil. Soil goes around the pipes and not into the pipe. And if you take a look, you can see that soil has not been backfilled into the drain pipe. So now that we've got the French drains in place, and again, I would typically recommend that you have 2 on either side of the tree. If you're on a hillside, again, all of this great advice coming from Gerardo, he recommends positioning it on the uphill part of the tree rather than on the downhill side of the tree. So if we're looking downhill from this position, I would have installed the drain pipe on this side between the tree and myself. But again, I'm kind of on level ground and I've just situated the way I did. I wanted to keep my pathway clear, and that was the reason I didn't put a drain pipe on this side where I'm sitting right now, just so that nobody would trip on it. So I kind of kept it off the path, and that's the reason I did this particular design. The other thing I want to share with you is if you take a look around the tree, I kind of created a ring as well. And I want to do this before I lay down any fertilizer and before I lay down another layer of wood chips that was originally here that's kind of scattered and worked its way into the soil since earlier this year. But I'm making a ring so that when I go to water, which we're going to do before we conclude, I want to make sure that the water stays around the root zone. And we know that the surplus water is eventually going to work its way into the drain pipes, fall to the bottom, depth about 18 to 24 inches deep, and then basically dry out at a lower level, keeping my root ball relatively dry. And again, all the reasons that we already said earlier, but I'm going to repeat: aeration and faster drying between waterings. And now what I'm going to do is add some fertilizer, and we're going to now add this product over here, which is the 6 macros plus fertilizer. And what's so awesome about this product compared to all the other fertilizers on the market is not only does it have the NPK you'll find in other fertilizers, which is your nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And take a look at how high that NPK percentage is, but it also has magnesium, sulfur, and calcium, hence the name 6 macros. The 6 macros being your 6 macronutrients that all plants need, whether they be fruits, flowers, trees, herbs, whatever it may be. Nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, magnesium, sulfur, and calcium, all important for the plant overall health. And the word macronutrients means the plants need it in abundance. In addition to the macronutrients, it also has a lot of micronutrients, hence the word plus being iron, manganese, zinc, copper, and boron. And a lot of these are derived from like crushed rocks such as azomite, but instead of azomite, it's got a product known as glacial rock dust. Just below that, zeolite powder. Check out this entire paragraph of ingredient, which includes the beneficial microbes and mycorrhiza. But let's just read the first line so you can see like how exhaustive this ingredient list is, which includes feather meal, alfalfa meal, fishbone meal, kelp meal, cottonseed meal, potassium sulfate, that glacial rock dust, which is crushed rocks that gives a lot of the micro elements as well, micronutrition, neem cake, rock phosphate, oyster shell flour, and so forth. The 6 macros plus this here is the super blend. This is a 4-pound bag where you can add a tablespoon per gallon of water to create up to 120 gallons of liquid fertilizer for your plants. There's also the premium blend. These are the smaller bags, but this here is the premium blend. The smaller bag is 11.8 ounces, makes up to 20 gallons. Again, a tablespoon per gallon of water. The premium blend is a lower NPK of 244 compared to the super blend, again, which is a 13, 12, 13. And these fertilizers right now in the month of September are the small bags, discounted to 50% off, as we've got a lot of product to clear before the end of this month. So go and check out that sale over there. Additionally, all the Ivory Organics products are also a 20% off going on again in the month of September for our end of summer sale. So be sure to check that one out at ivorganics.com. And now we're just simply going to scatter. Again, I could have put a tablespoon to a gallon of water. I'm just going to simply scatter a few tablespoons of the product around the tree, like so. You can also add a tablespoon or two to your compost tea to make sure that, again, it's got all of the elements in addition to those microbes as well into your compost tea. Basically brew over a few days to maximize on the microbes and the beneficial life that you'll find in this product, in addition to whatever other products you integrate when preparing your compost tea products. What we're then going to do is just simply take our hand tool. I'm going to scatter the fertilizer into the topsoil like so, and then I'm just going to take a layer of wood chips as well, and we're going to restore about a 2 to 3 inch layer of wood chips around the tree. I'm very careful to make sure that the wood chips are not in contact with the tree, as the tree trunk absorbs water, as do the wood chips, and together it's going to result in a phenomenon known as stem rot. So we're going to pull the wood chips away from the tree trunk, and then we're going to build it up about 2 to 3 inches. And the benefits of adding wood chips around your tree is it's going to keep the weed issue to a minimum. It actually eliminates weeds by somewhere from 60 to 80%. We're also going to help retain moisture between watering. In the summer, it's going to keep the soil a lot cooler. In the winter, it's going to keep the soil a lot warmer. So it basically serves as a blanket, insulating the soil and also preserving that soil biology around your plants. Another important one is, as the wood chips break down, that's going to further feed all of that soil biology, your earthworms, beneficial bacteria, and beneficial mycorrhizal fungal roots that are within and integrating within the plants to maximize the overall plant and tree's health and longevity. The last thing to do is water. So as we've already mentioned, when it comes to watering your plants, you want to make sure you soak them between waterings, allow the soil to then dry but never bone dry. And that's the general tip. In the summertime, that's an average of maybe 2 waterings a week. Maybe in Arizona, 3 times, or like those extremely hot zones, you might have to water every other day during the summer months. Again, the goal is you want to wait till the soil dries but never bone dry. In the spring and fall, you may need to water only once a week, and maybe during the hotter weeks, twice a week. And in the winter, depending on if you're in a rainy zone or not, probably no water all winter long. If there's no rain in your winters, maybe 1 watering per month, maybe 2 waterings a month. So that should kind of give you the idea, just depending on where you live in the country, that your watering may fluctuate from anywhere from once a month to as much as 3 times a week. Again, the range being winter, spring, summer, and fall. And so here we are now in the month of September, mid-September. We're going to want to make sure we soak this tree. Make sure that, especially at the time of fertilization, because we want to draw those fertilizers down to the entire root zone. And again, that's a good practice, no matter whether you're fertilizing or not, is that when you're watering, you're always trying to visualize that you're not just watering the surface, you want to water the entire root zone. So we're going to be very careful to make sure that we soak it quite well. And you can see that the fact that we created this berm is encouraging the water to stay around the root zone. Any surplus water that comes from irrigation surrounding the plant is going to hopefully find itself into one of the French drain systems surrounding it and drawing that water away from the tree. And together, hopefully, we're going to get to enjoy and experience the growth of this newest and latest addition, Hass avocado tree, to our backyard food forest. In the upcoming few weeks, we're going to do a demonstration on pots and potted plant care. And be sure to stay tuned for that. And we're going to do another demo using this AirPod, and we're actually going to be planting a plant together. So if you've enjoyed this educational moment brought to you by Ivory Organics, be sure to give us a thumbs up. And most importantly, don't forget to subscribe and hit that push bell notification to stay tuned for the next educational lesson brought to you by Ivory Organics. As always, keep growing with Ivory Organics, and wishing you all happy gardening.